Hello everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'll be talking about the 2024 New York 3rd District special election. I'll be giving my predictions for this election and doing just some brief analysis on this race. It's occurring on Tuesday in New York's 3rd District. It is occurring to replace George Santos, who, had a very interesting tenure in Congress for about a year. But, the seat is once again open. And Democrats have a good pickup opportunity here. This was a seat that voted for Joe Biden by 8%, elected George Santos in 2022. But it's now back open, and I think George Santos has really hurt the Republican brand. So I'm going to get into this video, and I'm going to be pretty clear at the start. I think Democrats should win this race. I think they're more likely than not to. Obviously, it's not a guarantee. This is still a competitive seat, but I'm going to rate this race as lean Democratic. Again, safe, likely, lean, toss-up, and then in the toss-up range, I don't leave toss-ups blank. This close to election day, I would just say tilt D or tilt R. But lean, just as a refresher for those of you who don't know, is a rating that you would give when you believe a race is competitive, but that there is a clear advantage for one party, and that all arguments to be made for the other party can be trumped by other arguments. So, lean is closer to toss-up than it is to safe, but it's still an indication that one party should win, even if the race will be close or is still competitive. So, there are kind of three reasons why I think that this is a lean Democratic race. The first is early voting, which I will be talking to the beginning here. The second is George Santos and why I think he's hurt the Republican brand here. And then the third, and I think the most important probably, is just special election trends here. So we'll do early voting first. So Tom Bonnier, who does early vote updates. Again, take early vote with a grain of salt, but at the same time, there's some level of analysis to be done, especially if it confirms your priors. He posted earlier today or earlier on Saturday. I shouldn't say earlier today because I'm going to release this on Sunday morning. It's Saturday afternoon right now. But he posted the Democrats right now are enjoying about an 11% party registration advantage in terms of early votes that have been turned in person, and then mailing votes. Obviously, there's less of these, but they're, as expected, very Democratic. I actually think this number is not amazing for Democrats. It probably should be closer to the mid-30s, but it's 12,000 votes. They're going to have an advantage here. I think it's good, unless the race comes down to a couple hundred votes. I think this will be sufficient, but if I'm a Democrat, I'd like this number to be a little higher. But this number is very good, and that is because, obviously, when you have a built-up lead, because, 38,000 votes here, 12,000 here, that's, just under 50K votes already turned in, and then, you look at the 2022 election here, we had a total of what? That's 270,000 votes. Yeah, so, you're probably going to expect turnout somewhere like maybe a quarter of 2022 turnout, maybe a third if we're lucky, we get a high turnout election. So a third of, what did I say, 270K, that would be 90K. So, assuming we have more than half the votes in and Democrats have this lead, it's going to be pretty hard for Republicans to overcome. They're going to need a big turnout on election day to do that. So that's the first thing. And again, early voting isn't everything. I said this at the beginning, take it with a grain of salt. You can do analysis. You can kind of see what each party needs right now. Like I just said, Republicans need a big turnout on election day, one that they might not get. But it's possible. And there are good examples of where, you'll kind of set a benchmark for what needs to happen, and that thing will happen. It still won't matter, right? Like in the Georgia runoffs in 2021, this is my favorite example of this. Everyone said, including myself, Republicans need a big turnout on election day, and they got the big turnout, and they still lost because a lot of the turnout came from Democratic areas. So if we see a big turnout, on Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon, it could still be a Democratic victory. A lot of it depends on where in the district it comes from. If it comes from the blue areas, great for Democrats. If not, and it's more Republican or more swing areas, that could really help Republicans. So again, very complicated stuff, but we know Republicans are in a bit of a hole right now, and they are not loving these numbers. And so that kind of brings me to my next point, which is, I think he actually mentions here in a reply here. So someone asked, does this track with what a Democratic needs to win the race? And then Tom Bonnier replies, yes, but still leaves the question of persuasion. And, I think Persuasion's interesting because Democrats have been doing really well with Persuasion in these special elections over the course of the past year. I'd say really since the Dobbs decision, they've done well. And, they've won other races, even in states that haven't been good. Like New York was really bad for Democrats last year. It almost elected a Republican governor. Democrats lost almost every competitive House race here except for Pat Ryan's district. So it was a bad year for Democrats in New York. But in other states, they had bad years, like especially Florida was even worse for them. But they came back and won the mayoral race in Jacksonville off Persuasion. They came back and won that, I think, special election somewhere in Miami-Dade County very recently that they really should have lost, and they won it off Persuasion. It was a pretty good turnout for Republicans, and Democrats won it by, I think, 2 or 3 points. And then obviously Democrats, have done well in other elections, like the Wisconsin Supreme Court election. They did, so well there because of Persuasion. And so really the common trend here is Democrats do well with independent voters in special elections. And part of that is because voters that turn out for special elections, I think, are a specific type of voter. Not every voter knows that there is a congressional special election or a Supreme Court election happening on any given Tuesday, right? It's an educated voter. It's a voter that, maybe is more involved in politics, that at least reads the news. And that voter skews more Democratic. College graduates backed Biden by, I think, a good amount in 2020, especially in New York. New York's, especially around the NYC metro area, there's a lot of college graduates in that region, very educated region of the country. Democrats did well there in 2020. Joe Biden did really well with those voters. And even though Kathy Hochul didn't do as well, she still held her own with college-educated voters. I still think she won them in New York by a good amount. So that demographic favors Democrats, and they're likely to turn out for this special election, whether that be on election day or by turning in a ballot early. So, the moderates of that group are more likely to swing towards Democrats than a moderate who maybe is voting in a presidential election. And so we have to keep that in mind. And that's why, kind of tying in my second point, George Santos has hurt the Republican brand. I think Democrats are going to benefit from Persuasion on election day. George Santos, I think, really hurt Republicans here. He lied about a lot of the things on his resume, just objectively. This isn't an endorsement or, a condemnation of Santos. Think of him what you want. But, he really hurt, I think, the GOP brand by being dishonest about what he had done in the past. And he also is under investigation for more illegal troubles on top of the lying. So, you never want to see that. And when he was in the news, like a lot of people that I know in real life that like aren't very political have I've heard them talk about George Santos in obviously, George Santos is not the first thing that you want to talk about when you wake up in the morning. But I know he's been in the news cycle a good amount when apolitical friends of mine have mentioned him once in passing, right? So that this is a real thing and it's not just a scandal limited to only the people who really, really interested in politics. So the average voter who maybe is undecided or maybe is on the fence might not be as likely to vote for a Republican in this specific race because this is the race to replace George Santos. So I think Republicans get punished for that a little bit. And then the final thing is, of course, as I said, special election trends. And another thing you have to remember is that when you look at fundraising here, Democrats have, done a pretty good job of outspending Republicans here. Tom Suozzi, who actually held the seat back in 2020, he won 2020 against George Santos himself, actually, although that was in a bluer district, so it doesn't mean too much, but, he did win. And, he's won the seat before. Tom Suozzi has spent, $2.4 million. I think it's Maisie. I should know. I've gotten her TV ads. Or I've gotten anti. I actually haven't seen one of her ads. I've seen pro Suozzi ads and anti. I think it's Mozzie. I don't know. I'll call her Pillar. I don't know how to pronounce her name either. This is bad. I should really know this. Pillip, I think is what I'll say. But I've seen ads against her. I haven't seen ads for her, and that kind of ties into this because she hasn't spent nearly as much money as Tom Suozzi has. So. She's getting outspent. She's getting beaten on the airwaves. And she is, I would say, not run the best campaign. She's been quiet, and I think that hurts her because she needs to distance herself from someone like George Santos, who is obviously not very popular in this district right now. And Tom Suozzi has won before. He's won voters in this district before. And I would just say that I think right now, given that and the fact that Democrats have been doing really well off persuasion in these special elections, and given the fact that the electorate likely to turn out for the special election is, as I mentioned, more educated, thus likely more Democratic, I think the electorate we're going to get here, even if we don't have amazing turnout for Democrats, will still skew towards them. And a Biden +8 seat, I think that'll be enough to get them a victory. I don't know by how much. I think it could be a blowout, like not blowout, but I think it could be like a decent victory, like a 9 or 10 point win. Just based off the early voting data, which is pretty good for Democrats, and maybe if Republicans don't turn out, and if Democrats do well with independents as they've been doing in these recent elections, that could totally happen. But on the contrary, I would argue that there's a chance Republicans outperform just based off of the fact that New York has been really bad for Democrats, and there's no reason to trust them here right now. So I'll go with the middle outcome. I think Pelosi wins by 5 or 6, which is a good victory for him. I think Democrats would take that. I think it's a good sign for them. But again, this is a seat where Republicans were always down. They're getting outspent. Their candidate, their incumbent resigned, in disgrace. And I would definitely say that if Republicans win here, it would be big for them, and it would really, really be quite surprising, especially given the circumstances. So lean Democratic is my rating for this election. Again, let me know what you think. Let me know who you expect to win. If you live in the 3rd District of New York, please go out and vote. It's especially like your vote. One of my favorite concepts in politics is that in smaller elections, your vote matters more because you make up a bigger share of the total electorate because you're 1 out of, say, 90,000 instead of 1 out of 270,000 or 1 out of 1,000,000. So go vote if you live in New York 3, and let me know what you think, and I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you.